Ladies and gentlemen, this is DVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. Now let's dive into the latest chapter of Vladimir Putin's fantastical fantasy land. The Russian president has just signed a decree regarding a special compensation regime for damages caused to Russia and the Central Bank of the Russian Federation. Whew, that's a mouthful. And it sounds official, right? Well, let's take it apart a little bit. What can only be described as a masterclass in delusion, Putin's new decree allows Russian authorities to block and seize all assets belonging to the United States. Yes, all of them. So if you got a Starbucks gift card stashed somewhere in Moscow, I'd say use it quick because it's about to become state property. Now, under these new regulations, Russian authorities will soon be identifying all American properties within their borders, including securities. And then, like a reverse Robin Hood on crack, they'll be officially taken over and used as compensation for the supposed damages Russia claims to have suffered due to the seizure of their own assets abroad. But here's the plot twist. Estonia has decided to take a stand in response and has already allocated funds from frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine. According to the head of Estonia's Foreign Affairs Committee, Kyiv can expect a tidy sum of 40 million euros of Russians' involuntary donation. Of course, this didn't sit well with the Kremlin. Dmitry Peskov, Putin's ever-faithful spokesperson, condemned the European Union's actions, calling it the expropriation of Russian property. Peskov warned that such moves create potential danger and leads to inevitable consequences. Oh no, Dmitry, not potential consequences. That sounds terrifyingly vague. The irony here is thicker than a Siberian winter. Russia, the nation that has perfected the art of expropriating, annexing, and generally taking what isn't theirs, is now throwing a tantrum over a taste of their own medicine. It's like the playground bully crying because someone took his lunch money.
Ну, действительно, и в Вашингтоне, и в некоторых европейских столицах усердно провоцируют ситуацию и повышают постоянно уровень эскалации. В этом плане скорее можно охарактеризовать их позицию как безответственную. Мы знаем, что и среди сенаторов американских, и среди конгрессменов очень много горячих голов, которые считают своим долгом дальше подливать масло в огонь. Ну, очевидно, сейчас уже для всех специалистов становится очевидно, что никакие вооружения не способны каким-то образом переломить ход событий в зоне СВО. И единственное, что способны сделать эти вооружения, это сделать более тяжелую участь украинского народа. Позиция абсолютно безответственная, позиция опасная своими последствиями. Россия продолжает специальную военную операцию и сделает это будет делать до того момента, когда не будут достигнуты все поставленные цели.
So, in summary, Putin's fantasy decree is as realistic as a unicorn riding unicycle. Estonia is leading the charge in making Russia pay for its misdeeds, and the Kremlin is acting like a toddler who just discovered that actions have consequences. Tune in next week when Putin decrees that gravity is now illegal and Russia claims ownership of the moon. Now, since we're diving into the latest from Russia, it seems that the most dangerous place to be right now isn't the front lines of Ukraine, but rather a high-ranking position in the Russian military. Case in point, a deputy chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Vadim Shamarin, has been arrested by a military court for allegedly accepting a hefty bribe. If convicted, he faces up to 15 years in prison. Now, you'd think that generals would be a little more discreet, but apparently they're just lining up to see who can get caught next. Shamarin isn't alone in this grand parade of corruption. On May 17th, the 235th Garrison Military Court announced the arrest of Major General Ivan Popov, former commander of the 58th Combined Arms Army. Popov is accused of large-scale fraud. Allegedly, he was involved in the theft of over 1,700 tons of metal products intended for humanitarian aid in the Zaporizhzhia region. The stolen materials, worth over 130 million rubles, were supposed to be used for engineering defensive structures. Instead, they went poof, and the money somehow ended up lining Popov's pockets. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, a few days prior, the same court decided to detain Lieutenant General Yuri Kuznetsov, head of the main directorate of personnel of the Ministry of Defense. Now, this guy is accused of large-scale bribery. It's like corruption has become a competitive sport among Russian military brass. It's almost comforting to know that no matter where you look, there's a certain universal constant. The higher you climb, the harder you fall, and in Russia, that fall is likely to land you in a very small, very cold cell. So tune in next week to see which Russian general wins the next round of Who Wants to Be a Prisoner. Now, briefly turning our gaze eastward, we have a rather sensational report from Global Press reporting that China has announced its intention to invade Taiwan in early June. The Chinese announcement, of course, is expected to come with the usual bravado of taking Taipei in 3 days. But if recent history is any guide, we might soon be treated to more videos of confused young soldiers in their underwear, wondering how their training exercises turn into an international incident. And now it's that time of the episode for your favorite Russian propagandist, Vladimir Solovyov. In his latest show, Solovyov claimed that when people choose their president, they trust him entirely.
Я верю в то, что на самом деле человек отвечает перед Богом. И когда он отвечает перед Богом в последний момент, он отвечает за весь прожитый путь. И он отвечает не как представитель той или иной группы, той или иного сословия. Вот он есть со всем, что он сотворил в этой жизни на этих весах. Когда человек идет во власть, когда его выбирают, его вот выбирают как человека, который дошел до этого момента, они на него смотрят и говорят: мы тебе доверяем, мы анализируем, какой ты, мы смотрим твой жизненный путь, и мы хотим, чтобы ты защищал нас.
Да.
Это всегда вопрос личности.
Поэтому меритократия, да.
Абсолютно верно. Поэтому люди голосуют за личность. Она может себя впитать, они могут представить самое разное, но это всегда личность. И мне вот всегда поэтому казалось странным, когда говорят представительство женщин, мужчин, молодых, старых, блондинов, голубоглазых. Вот личность. Люди тебе доверяют и говорят: вот ты наш защитник. Мы тебе доверяем быть во власти. Ты будешь служить нам.
Solovyov went on to say that everyone will answer to God and some nonsense about the Russian president serving the people. So here's the thing. Every one of us will answer to God, some of you for what you're doing now in Ukraine and other countries. Those who support Putin and his war, it's safe to say that the judgment won't be so kind. Now, another day, another dose of cringe from the Russian propaganda machine. Here's a video of how Russia wants people to see Ukraine, though you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who'd fall for it. Are you ready? I can't be the only one suffering from secondhand embarrassment.
Отойди, пацан.
Yeah, Ukrainian tank operator wearing blackface shot a kid waving a Soviet Union flag. How more on the nose can it get? If anyone bought this, well, I have a bridge to sell. Meanwhile, we should keep in mind that it's the Russians who are torturing people of all ages in the Kyiv and Kherson regions. And you can only imagine what they're doing to kids in currently occupied territory. How many kids were kidnapped by Russia? How many kids were killed in Ukraine because Russia launched a war? The exploitation of kids as propaganda when the war isn't even on your territory is more than a bit rich. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to DVP World.